What's going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music, and Happy New Year to you all. I know it's been a while since the last time I uploaded a video, but I honestly just haven't had the ability or opportunity to shoot a video up until today. Hopefully this video will mark the beginning of a regular upload schedule, and I will try to keep that as consistent as humanly possible. So, with that being said, I want to jump straight into the record that I wanted to talk about today. And that record is one that I picked up at the end of last year, and that is Rene Costy, Expectancy. What is that? There we go. Collected Library Music. Don't want to botch that. This is a fine record. If you're interested in library music, and if you want to sort of explore Rene Costy's music outside of Scrabble, which I think is the one track that most people know Rene Costy for because Jay Dilla sampled it for the song Fuck the Police, then I highly recommend that you check this compilation out. So, with that sort of introduction out of the way, let's get into this record. So for those of you who have been watching this channel for a while, might actually remember that the first record that I reviewed was Chapel Mood Music Volume 26, Rene Costy and his Orchestra. And whatever happened to Volumes 1 through 25, I have absolutely no idea. But stupid jokes aside, I picked this record up originally thinking that after buying this, I wouldn't need another Rene Costy record, or that this record would pretty much be symbolic of everything that Rene Costy ever did. So I thought that buying this compilation was completely unnecessary. And as it turns out, actually having listened to this compilation quite a bit, I discovered that aside from the track Scrabble, which, like I said, is probably Rene Costy's most well-known track, if you can even call it that, there is no overlapping music between this record and this compilation. So that in and of itself makes it worth looking into or worth a listen. But also, what I found surprising between the Chapel Mood Music and the compilation is that this record really only explores one facet of Rene Costy's music, basically jazz funk. And this record, well, it does do quite a bit of exploring Rene Costy's jazz funk compositions. It actually dives into some of his more experimental tracks as well. And that in and of itself makes this record worth listening to and worth checking out. If you're unfamiliar with who Rene Costy is, he's a Belgian classically trained violinist slash jazz musician slash musical maniac who released the majority, if not all of his music on various library music record labels. If you're unfamiliar with what library music is essentially the royalty-free music of back then. So if you were working on a commercial, radio show, TV show, or a movie, but you didn't have enough money to pay a composer, an orchestra, or a band in order to soundtrack that particular project, you could always just pull from a library music record label and use that music at a considerably lower cost than it would be to get someone to actually make music for your project. So it's not really that different from royalty-free music today. The main difference was that most of this music from the library music record labels was never meant for public consumption. It was always just meant to be used in the industry, and they were never meant to be sold. Yet somehow throughout the years, it seems as though they made their way into record stores or record bins, or maybe radio stations held them, or maybe the record labels that were holding on to these library onto these library music records were just, they would go bankrupt, and then people such as your hip-hop producers or electronic music producers would find out about these records, and they would start buying them because a lot of these library records had some really interesting takes on genres that everybody knew about. And I think through that, well, not through that, but really considering most of the people that were putting out music on these library music record labels were generally pretty faceless and didn't really have a name to go with any of the songs that appeared on these library music records. Rene Costy, just for me, I guess, is probably one of the most visible people in that whole scene of music that most people really don't know anything about. If you want to find out more information about Rene Costy and library music in general, I highly recommend that you pick this up because it definitely details it a lot more accurately than I could ever do in a YouTube video. But I want to move away from that. I want to actually talk about the music that's on this compilation and just give you a better idea of what you're in for if you decide to pick this up. So the compilation itself is a double LP, and I'll show you the back of the record so you can see it for yourself. That one LP is completely devoted to all of his jazz funk compositions, and then the other LP is completely devoted to his electronic, early synthesizer, soundscapey kind of shit. So the one thing that I will say about this compilation is if you're going into it only hoping to get some solid jazz funk out of it, you might be a little disappointed that only one of the two records in this compilation is devoted to it. But if you're interested like I am, and you enjoy hearing some of those early synthesizer compositions, then I think you get a lot of joy out of that second LP as much as the jazz funk only LP that is part of this compilation. In terms of the grooves record on here, I gotta say, I'm sort of in between opinions on this because it really didn't offer that many surprises to me. And Scrabble, which, you know, I already had on the Rene Costy and his orchestra, Chapel Music, Volume 26, that's still my favorite Rene Costy track. I was kind of hoping by listening to this compilation that I would find another Rene Costy song that I liked as much as that one. And I gotta say, Scrabble is still my favorite Rene Costy song of all time. There's just something about that drum break and those the interplay between the violins and the horns on that track that just elevate it to a sort of musical mastery that I don't feel like the tracks on here quite reach. That being said, these are still some mighty fine jazz funk tracks with plenty of groove, plenty of interesting arrangements, a surprisingly liberal amount of violin on here, which generally I really don't like, and Rene Costy might just be the first musician to combine violin and jazz and make it work for me. All the tracks on here are instrumental, and if you're just looking for some sort of cinematic, sort of nice background jazz funk with some solid drums and interesting arrangements, you really can't go wrong with this compilation and that record alone. But that record only equals one half of what's contained on this record. And I think I have to get into the scapes side of this record. For me, where this compilation really shines is in the Scapes record. Because when I bought this compilation, and I didn't really do a whole lot of research as to the music that was on here, I was expecting a double LP of nothing but solid jazz funk. And when I found out that the second record was a lot of weird string scapes and early synthesizer experiments, I was completely shocked. And when I say completely shocked, I was really excited, because this is kind of a first of a kind record for me. I've always been interested in this kind of music, but never really dove into it because it's really expensive and a lot of those records are really hard to find. And now I had a record like that in my collection. And in terms of these sort of soundscapes that you're going to get on the Scapes record in this compilation, you're going to get a lot of interesting, varied compositions. Some of them seem to focus more on creating a sort of tense atmosphere, something that might be in a suspense or horror movie. Some of them really just feel like he's fiddling around with some early synthesizers. And some of them surprisingly sound like some proto video game soundtracks. And me being a bit of a retro gamer, immediately found joy in hearing those retro, completely outdated but still lovable old school synth sounds. And it seems like the tracks in the Scapes side of this record are sort of split between the synth experiments and his string arrangement stuff. On a personal note, from a personal standpoint, I prefer the more synth stuff just because it's a bit more alien, and I love weird sounds and weird textures. But I should say that it's not really a slight to the excellent string compositions that are also on the Scapes record. It's just I tend to lean more towards the more synth-based stuff. So I've talked a little bit about the Grooves record. I've talked about the Scapes record. I want to mention just real quick some things to be aware of if you're going to buy this record. As I mentioned before, if you're going into this expecting that it's going to be a double LP of jazz funk, you're only getting half of that. On the flip side, if you're going into this expecting to get a lot of weird early electronic soundscapes, you're only going to get half of that. But if you go into this with an open mind and are just really interested in a body of work of a composer who, in my opinion, deserves to be a bit more celebrated, highly recommend that you pick this up, because this is probably the cheapest way to get into Rene Costy's music. I don't know, there may be other compilations out there. This is the only one that I know of, and this is certainly the newest Rene Costy compilation, because this came out actually last year, surprisingly. So if you're looking to dive into, I guess, who might be considered a figurehead in the library music scene, definitely check out Rene Costy's Expectancy. Solid compilation. I don't know what else to say about this record. I'm really into it. Hopefully you check this out for yourself. Always go over to my WordPress or Steemit blog so you can find out more, and, well, not find out more, but you can check out sound clips of this release for yourself. Like I said, as of this video, I should be back to doing videos more regularly, and hopefully I'll be able to do them a little bit easier. I don't know, being out of it for a while, this video turned out to be a lot more difficult to put together than I thought it would. But if you're a fan of Rene Costy, if there is another Rene Costy record that I should be looking for, let me know down in the comments. And I guess the other thing that I want to say is make sure you head over to my Mixcloud, as I uploaded at the end of last year my very first Raw Select radio show, which I'm hoping to start making a regular thing, if not once a month, probably twice a month. Twice a month will probably be on the high end and might be a little bit more difficult to keep consistent. But for now, I'm shooting for once a month. Thanks again, as always, for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this. I'm still shit at ending YouTube videos, so I'm going to say thank you very much, and see you in the next one.